This is very serious. It is threatening property rights throughout the province.
It does not stop. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today we have more First Nation land claims, land back. We have another task force out to take some land from the taxpayers, from the crown. Who knows? Boo doesn't know. That's why she's out of here. She's had enough of it. Let's jump into this. We've got $8.4 million from the government of Canada to support revitalization of Indigenous languages in Northwest Territories. And with that, we've got a whole bunch of First Nation stuff here. We've got Brittany posting this. Squamish Council vote on joint land back task force. Yeah, what does that mean? What do we think that means? Obviously, they're going to take land back. As Brittany pointing out, it's just a framework, but we know framework turns into policy, of course. Otherwise, why are they doing this? The end goal is to take land back. It's scary. All these people who think it's not need to wake up. The government has opened up a giant can of worms with this and should have never opened this door. This is how it starts, and it's very hard to change course. We're all doomed. Hopefully, markets will still descend enough this summer to sell and get out and move even further into the country. I mean, I don't think people across Canada are even safe from this with their treaties because they can just open this stuff back up. Going into this article, it's about what you would expect here. They voted on this, unanimously brought in this task force. It says the land back task force exists to research, learn, and engage with both districts of Squamish residents and seven mesh people of the concept of land back. This is so contradictory because look at this. It says its primary goal is to develop a framework for land back in the district of Squamish. That's what it says right here. Then it says including policy considerations for future public land dispositions by the district and joint use of district lands. But then it goes on to say the task force does not have decision-making power in or of itself, and neither does this group have decision-making power over private land. That's not what this is about. And it goes on to say land back does not mean removing people from privately owned property. They're not doing that with the Cowichan either, but it's devaluing the land. It's scaring away business. And the key word here is yet. We already saw in Comox, BC, people are getting kicked off of land because they're not native. As far as I know, that's against the law. You can't have these race-based decisions, but they did it anyways. They're evicting these people. They're giving them, a year and a half, 2 years notice to get off the land so they can have their own people live there. For now, they say this isn't about kicking people off land, and maybe that is the case, but maybe they also get to triple the property taxes and people won't have any say in it. I brought up another story in the channel a couple months ago. I think it was Chief White Duck trying to claim about $50 billion of land just to the west of Ottawa. It's all wetland kind of area, so there's no houses on it, and it's a smart move because nobody's going to fight back on it because no one's living on it. And we're seeing it across Canada, just First Nations trying to do these land grabs to get absolutely stinking rich. We're seeing this story here posted by Le Reclamaire. 2 members of the Niska Nation have filed lawsuit in BC Supreme Court alleging the First Nation failed to adequately consult its citizens before partnering with Western LNG on the development of Prince Rupert gas transmission project. They're disrupting prosperity in our country and then doing these land grab title nonsense. It's just absolutely insane. We need strong leadership both provincially and federally to handle this. Obviously, Carney and David Eby are enabling it. When you're seeing headlines like this, First Nation withdraws support for a BC energy export project, cut off the funding. I bet you their support would come roaring back right away. And you'll notice too, he's mentioning coastal First Nations effectively selling the rights to title the weaponized lawfare. Coastal First Nations is not a First Nation band. It's an activist group being funded by American billionaires to try to hurt our economy. And we got nonsense like this coming from the city of Victoria Reconciliation Contribution Fund. Yeah, this is a real thing on the website here, victoria.ca. In 2015, 94 calls of action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada made clear that municipalities like the city of Victoria have a key role to play in reconciliation. Reconciliation is more than words. It also must include actions. Like what? Funding First Nations for what? Like 100 years? That's not enough? How much more do we have to pay? I didn't do anything. Neither did everyone else around me. All this conflict over this happened with people that are all dead. Not a single person is alive from back then. All Canadians today should be treated equal. This is out of control. It says here, 2022, the City of Victoria established Reconciliation Contribution Fund. This fund allows anyone to contribute a voluntary amount to the Songhees Nation and Zekwesum Nation. So right now it's voluntary. It says the city has contributed $200,000. This is just fat cat chiefs. Just be gorging on these taxpayer dollars. And right now it's voluntary. When does it not become voluntary? We know how this goes. We got Squamish Council here setting up land back task force. It's only a framework, but don't worry guys, only a framework until it's not. And with that, I've got an exclusive for you here. So this is Carrie Lynn Finley. She was Pierre Poilievre's chief opposition whip, was Minister of National Revenue. She's been in the party a long time, as I mentioned before, true blue conservative. And years ago, she had her own battle with none other than the Musqueam Nation, and she won that battle.
And here we are in BC, where we didn't have as many completed treaties as they've had in other provinces. But whose fault is that? In the terms of unity with BC and Canada, it was squarely set out that Aboriginal Indigenous rights and those issues are federal. But what has happened in the absence of that work being done by the federal government, the provincial government, and even municipal government started stepping in. Side deals were made, these deals were made. Even now, when we do have some treaties, they're all open-ended. Right. So at the end of the treaty, it says, but if another First Nation comes along and gets a better deal, we can open this all up again. So that leaves the rest of us with no certainty. Now we've had...
You hear that? If they don't like the deal, just open it back up. Someone else got a better deal. Now I want a better deal. What did the Cowichan get? I want as much money as them. This is the state we're in now. You got to remember too, she's a lawyer. She went through this herself against the Musqueam Nation.
They're calling the Cowichan decision of our BC Supreme Court, and it will be appealed. But the judge said in that decision, neither the provincial nor the federal government took any position at all on the primacy of private property rights over this blanket DRIPA, as we call it, Aboriginal governance rights. And our land title system has been in place, I looked it up, since 1861, and the modern statute since 1979. We were always very proud of that. It's a Torrens system, and it's supposed to be the best land title system in the world. Well, not anymore with this decision. What it's causing is division in our province between the 95% who are not Indigenous and the 5% that are.
Now listen to this next part. She gets to the heart of this. Where does this all come from? Because there's been all these sneaky side deals, David Eby running up to Haida Gwaii and all this kind of stuff, Musqueam Nation. Where does this all come back to? We know where.
And it becomes a bit of a tyranny of the minority, frankly, because it hasn't been handled well by the legislators. And a lot of people, including First Nations leaders I know, say, well, let the courts figure it out. They'll figure it out. It's not that simple, because the Crown in a court matter is instructed by the government of the day. The government of the day is the Crown, and they pick the lawyers and they choose the arguments they present. And so it is very political. It isn't just an arm's length court system. And a judge, and I think we've got at least one retired judge here, will tell you when you're deciding a case, you can only do that based on the evidence before you. If the evidence isn't argued, if the evidence isn't presented, you cannot, of your own volition as a judge, bring it into the discourse. It doesn't work that way. So this is very serious. It is threatening property rights really throughout the province, even though the case was decided based in Richmond.
This all comes back to the Liberals. They've been setting this up so Canadians would have potentially their houses, their title at risk, or what we pay taxes to First Nations. Now, nobody knows, and businesses don't want to have anything to do with this. The Liberals are intentionally hurting the property rights of British Columbians. I can't see how a single British Columbian would vote for the Liberal Party or the NDP party ever again. David Eby went along with this. He lied about it, sitting in the front row of this Musqueam Nation land back agreement, and then says, oh, I wasn't there. I didn't know what they were signing. I just kind of showed up. And we already know he's lying, but I mean, what's his defense? That he's incompetent? Who would ever vote for the NDP or the Liberals? They're trying to devalue your land, and as Carrie Lynn has posted another short, they don't need to steal your land. They just devalue the heck out of it, both personal real estate and commercial market. As I mentioned, we've already seen numerous companies in the Cowichan area, multi-$100 million facilities being canceled because of this. It's hurting prosperity, all this land grab nonsense. If First Nations want land, they can buy it just like every other Canadian. They don't want to be Canadian, well then maybe that's another topic, but I don't think that's the case. Most First Nation members are too scared to speak up against the corrupt chiefs, and not all of them are corrupt. There's only select ones that are corrupt, but the bands that are corrupt, they're like little dictatorships where they can't speak up or they don't get money because the money goes to the chiefs and they speak up, they don't get anything. It hurts their life. It's ridiculous. Canadians need fair treatment across the board. We should be getting rid of this entire system. They should divvy up all the reserves among the people there, the reserve members, and then every Canadian pays taxes like right now every normal Canadian does. Instead, they're trying to do this grift where they steal people's land or title, destabilize the whole region, and what? China's going to come in, bottom barrel prices, start scooping everything up. Canadians have to wake up right now. Here we've got a BC Aboriginal lawyer says this entire thing is BS.
Shockingly stating that upon a finding of title, the very regime that grants indefeasible title no longer applies. Says it 7 times in the decision. And then says, so it would be bad enough if it was on the 800 acres. I suspect we'd still be on the panel. The court actually writes, this is a lower court, saying, oh, by the way, this is a precedent for the rest of the province as well. If that were to stand, it would be catastrophic. And I don't think that's hyperbole. The notion, I mean, do we have an example of a Western economy that doesn't have the concept of indefeasible title private property? The answer is no. There's a reason for that.
This is going to lead to some very bad stuff, like some serious barbarianism. If you have First Nations successfully taking people's land or devaluing people's land, they've spent their entire life paying off a mortgage, and then you just get screwed over by this nonsense. Watch out. Just waiting for EB and Carney to say, well, you wanted cheaper houses, you got them. Well, so they start buying up people's property, they forced to sell with negative equity and no mortgage for profit. Are they setting this up for China just to come in and clean sweep buy up all this premium land here in Vancouver? We've got David Eby and Mark Carney both have strong ties to Xi Jinping and the corrupt communist regime in China. Damn, this has messed up the Vancouver market built on real estate. What happens to everyone who is mortgaged to the hilt? They get screwed over. I mean, the whole market in Vancouver, I lived through it, where it just got pumped and pumped and pumped by corrupt money laundering from China. We're talking money that was being funneled through casinos in Macau. People would buy these casino packages with Chinese RMB, and then their winnings they would convert into CAD. They'd transfer it over to like HSBC in Hong Kong, and then they could transfer that directly to HSBC in Port Coquitlam and then buy houses and get their money out of China. There was no legal way of getting your money out of China. It was like something really low, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 per year that the Chinese government allowed you to move out of the country. So they use this casino hack to get all the money into Vancouver. Not to mention, we see all the stuff that Sam Cooper brings up. We've got all the cartels. They dump a lot of their money that they make into the real estate market to get it out of being cash, right? They wash the money clean. And now it almost seems like they're trying to devalue it all just to make money off of it all over again.
Brent and I lived through this in the late 90s and 2000. We were Musqueam leaseholders on Musqueam First Nation land. And I had moved there as a young widow. And then I found an unsuspecting bachelor and we got married. And so I was on my own for 4 years. And then we had 2 more children and on it went. So now we have 4 children. And when I first moved there, I thought because it was peaceful, it had been sort of peaceful coexistence, if you will, for 25 years, it would continue. But a year after I moved there, the federal government first transferred taxation authority to the Musqueam First Nation. So instead of paying my taxes at fair market value to the city of Vancouver, which is how I started, suddenly we were paying our taxes to the Musqueam First Nation, where we had no representation. Only band members can make any representation at all to council. That's the way it works. Okay, so suddenly you're being taxed without representation. And I was told that's an American concept. Now, a lot of Canadians don't realize that. A lot of Canadians think, if you're the taxing authority, I should be able to go and talk to you. And that is true if it's a normal municipal arrangement, but not if it's Aboriginal governance. The second thing that happened was the provincial government then said, we're going to change the BC Assessment Act. And instead of your properties being assessed at fair market value, they will now be assessed at fee simple value, comparable fee simple value off reserve. So not only are you now paying your taxes to a different tax authority to whom you are not allowed to make any representation, but also you're paying double or triple the tax you would otherwise pay.
Just as I mentioned, they can increase the rates. There's nothing you can do. And as she said, there's no representation. She lived through this.
On top of that, there was coming up for renegotiation an extra annual payment that was being made. And there was a dispute over that. And in the end, it went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. So as a lawyer, I was the instructing solicitor, but I couldn't be a lead counsel because I was involved personally, but I did end up going with the team to the Supreme Court of Canada. The First Nations sued all these leaseholders. While all that uncertainty was going on over title and who's in charge and who's taxing who and who do you pay to and all of this, the market value of these homes plummeted. Appraisers could not appraise because they said, we don't know what these homes are worth.
And look what's happening today. The Cowichan, the market has gone down. And there was an article that came out and said they've dropped, 30, 40, 50%, something like that. And in that article, they say that the most of it is just because the people don't know, the uncertainty has dropped the value. But that's all it is in anything. Even if in the stock market, the value of Tesla stock or Microsoft or Apple, it's all people speculating how they feel, is it going to go to the moon? Is it going to drop? There's all sorts of things that affect the market. They're not true evaluations usually of how much production, cash flow, and profit these companies are making. It's not all mathematical equations. There's just a lot of hype or emotions and feeling into stuff. And the same thing in the real estate market. It's all just emotion and feeling. People can manipulate that. That's another topic. But the land value has dropped in the Cowichan claimed area. And the same thing happened for her back in the 90s with the Musqueam band.
And if an appraiser can't give an appraisal, then the banks will not lend, they will not refinance, and you cannot sell. So we were in that position. When I say to people the fear is real and it is an asset confiscation, I know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about someone who's lived it, litigated it, and understands it. And we need someone like that to take leadership of the Conservative Party of BC. It is too central an issue. It can affect everyone in the province. They don't need to take your title. And you'll see some headlines now where the First Nation, the government says, no one's after your title. But if all equity is sucked out of your title doesn't mean anything anymore.
This is a great speech here by Carrie Lynn. And that's just it. We need somebody who's had this experience to deal with this, because this is the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems we're seeing for sure on the West Coast and throughout Canada, because this can spread like a scourge across our country. But don't worry, folks, it gets worse. We've got grade 7 classes across Canada are learning this land acknowledgement nonsense. Get your barf bag ready for this.
Do you think 12-year-olds should be spending class time writing land acknowledgements? Well, Canadian students are being asked to do exactly that as part of their grade 7 curriculum. Students are now learning the Indigenous Teachings and Land Acknowledgement Unit. And as part of this, they are comparing Western ideas with Indigenous ideas, as you can see here. And they're kind of describing the West as individualistic and Indigenous as kind and collective.
This is all selective wording, and really this is only to benefit the chiefs. The reserve people, very kind, nice people, but a lot of them, if they're on the corrupt chiefs reserves in those bands, they're enslaved like this little dictatorship. Like I said, if they speak up against the chief, and I've had numerous people tell me this, if they speak up, they do not get any money from the chief, or they get limited funds. It hurts them financially. Their life is more miserable if they speak up. So they're essentially enslaved to these corrupt chiefs. On the flip side, you have really good chiefs that run their bands really clean. They've got great financials. It's all buttoned up, and they're the ones investing in oil and gas and all this kind of stuff that booms the economy around there, good paying jobs in the oil industry or gas or energy projects, whatever it may be. The problem is the system is set up that the corrupt chiefs have just gone buck wild with this. And then as we saw with Sam Cooper, a lot of these people are being enticed, or maybe they're willingly going along with it, being influenced by China, Xi Jinping getting access to our critical minerals and to our country. And the Liberals have enabled all of this. And are we really surprised? I mean, Mark Carney went and did a deal with Xi Jinping himself to help bail out Brookfield, $276 million loan, not to mention Mark Carney, when he's the governor of the Bank of England, opened the door for financing and integration with China. He was the one who did that. We got it right here. More broadly, London markets serve as a vital global role. London acts as Europe's window to global capital, in the center of emerging market finance, and can play an important role in the financing opening of China. You can see this article here, Mark Carney, the UK, the heart of a renewed globalization. We've got this one here, news release, Bank of England, June 18th, 2014, announcements of renminbi clearing bank in London. This is the Chinese money. The People's Bank of China has confirmed the appointment of China Construction Bank as the renminbi clearing bank in London. And it goes on to say here, you can see Mark Carney, governor of the Bank of England, said the announcement of China Construction Bank as the London RMB clearing bank following yada 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 represents another important milestone of the progress towards greater cross-border use of the RMB. Carney's been at this for years in multiple countries. He's the worst person, I believe, in Canada to have as prime minister. At this point, it'd be better to have this zombie doing the street fennel on a train in Toronto as prime minister than Mark Carney, because at the very least, this person, I can't actually show you them puffing it up. YouTube doesn't like that. But at the very least, this person wouldn't do anything which would be better for our country.